My first year of college was incredibly difficult to get through. If your experience was anything like mine, then you remember being flooded with pounds of work that you simply didn't want to do. Your interests were being cast aside in favor of meaningless busywork that you were told to do. You might not even know if you like what you're doing, but you're compelled by the blind conformity of your peers to trudge along anyway. Upon entering a college campus, you are also met with a variety of people, many of whom are objectively more talented, skilled, or driven than you. Jealousy and despair can grow like a weed in your mind, and if you're not careful, you might find yourself alone. Should you fail to confide your feelings in people who surround you, you'll just be adding a new layer of difficulty to your experience. In this environment, how can you thrive? The community and its interests are beyond you. You may feel directionless, and above all, envious of those who can feign a profile of success. I was not unique for finding myself in this position. Not only did I see the same sense of existential pain in my classmates, but I had seen it before in one of the most popular villains in gaming history, Sephiroth. Every single one of my classmates at Duke were, at one point in high school, the most successful and lauded students of their classes. But upon starting our first semester, we quickly came to understand the roots of our successes. What I once perceived as my intellect, I learned, was nothing more than a blind pursuit of more praise from my peers and teachers. Every word of encouragement, every talk about our future success in college, standardized testing, and studying for grades wasn't for me. It was on behalf of an entire schooling system deliberately weighing me down, pushing me to follow a path that everyone around me supported. I was really just taking orders, too doped up on praise to see I wasn't living for myself. Throughout Sephiroth's entire life, he knew nothing about the reasons for his superhuman abilities, but nevertheless, he became the object of praise for young men his age. All who searched for courage looked to Sephiroth for inspiration. But Sephiroth is the product of a rigid and structured science experiment. He was created to harness the powers of the extraterrestrial Cetras, and raised to use his powers for the benefit of the Shinra Corporation. One day, on a mission in the quiet village of Nibelheim, Sephiroth learns about his birth. In the depths of a nearby Shinra reactor, Sephiroth sees hordes of monsters being birthed with Mako energy and Genova cells. They were being mass-produced. Their appearances were vastly different from his, but their strength is too comparable to his to ignore. Sephiroth spends the next 7 days furiously studying their creation until he learns the truth. Just like the monsters in the reactor, Sephiroth is the product of a system designed to produce useful copies of the same being. Since his childhood, Sephiroth knew he was powerful, but nobody ever told him about how reproducible he was. His purpose for existence was only to serve the system that created him. None of his accomplishments, his choices in life, and his praise were his own. He was nothing but a tool. His peers worshipped his greatness even though he was nothing unique. The Cetra were superior to him. His creation was just a scheme, and his courage and strength, once a source of his pride, were not even his own. His whole character was created to serve Shinra, and to justify the creation of more pawns just like himself. Sephiroth spirals into an uncontrollable rage. He destroys Nibelheim, renounces his life as a Shinra soldier, and soon plots to destroy the world that selfishly created him for its own benefit. What did he owe the world? It brought him into a life that he never asked for. Its continued existence was an insult to his pain. He owed this world nothing but annihilation. Now, if you're in college, tell me. You've been praised your whole life, but what really compels you? Is it the praise? Perhaps you think you chose this path for yourself. Perhaps you and the millions of other college students who are drowning in debt, succumbing to praise, and actively conforming to pressure are somehow unique. But when the dust settles, will you honestly be able to tell me you've independently reached your goals? Or will the pressures and expectations and stories of your upbringing continue to haunt you in the future you've achieved for yourself? In college, the insecurity explored in Sephiroth's character can be seen in everyone. As much as some will fake effortless perfection, you will inevitably question yourself, and without someone to confide in, you might find yourself feeling the same rage Sephiroth developed as he laid waste to Nibelheim. Sephiroth was a completely different man before his true identity drove him to madness. If you've ever played Crisis Core, you remember him as reserved and apathetic. Every scene with Sephiroth, whether it was combat or investigation, featured his same indifferent attitude. Most reviews of Crisis Core I've seen, as a result, denounce his character. They call him unexpressive and uninteresting. But I think their criticisms stem from a lack of understanding of what Sephiroth's character trajectory is meant to be. Despite being praised his whole life, Sephiroth is decidedly mature, wise even. He doesn't let his emotions and feelings influence his decisions, and as a result, he is truly a model to look up to and follow. But after the Nibelheim incident, Sephiroth becomes a madman. All his years of work taming himself are lost. His ruthlessness is purely fueled by emotions, and his once honorable goals are nothing to him. The idea that someone so collected and careful could be destroyed by an identity crisis just shows how serious of a matter it really is. Without an understanding of who you are, your entire livelihood is jeopardized. It isn't something you can accept, and when this kind of tragedy strikes, your options are limited. For most of us, coming to terms with the sad truth usually leads us to one path: despair, and depending on the severity of the situation, some even fall into depression. Our emotions take us here for the simple fact that we are powerless. We feel pain because of transgressions we see going against us, but our rage has no outlet to express itself, and when that anger is contained, our feelings are ultimately corrupted and depressed. Sephiroth, on the other hand, is superhuman. He has the capability to destroy and wreak havoc on those who have wronged him. Sephiroth's relatability and draw as a villain comes from our powerlessness. We sympathize with him because, while our sadness usually takes us to depression, his sadness opens the doors to a cathartic destruction that deep down, we actually want to see. If you've ever felt cheated, used, or hated, you can understand Sephiroth's pain. And this time, it's him, the outcast, not the establishment, who has the means and drive to do what is just. You might not be able to change your situation, but at least someone like Sephiroth could. We will never know what Sephiroth truly loved in his life, but the impact he has had on the player is priceless. His tragic end taught us a lesson about how we must interpret our goals and aspirations. And more importantly, he showed us that in the face of any adversity, it's too dangerous to lose sight of how valuable you really are. Thanks for watching.